So I wanted to add on one more snippet to this video as I'm thinking about and reflecting on what the elements are that are common among all schools of Buddhism. And in doing so, I would also like to again invite any of you to make comments below if you think of other elements that you want to add to the list. But it occurred to me that, in a fundamental way, all schools of Buddhism acknowledge and respect the founder of Buddhism, namely Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha who lived, about 2,500 years ago. And so, clearly we owe so much to him and his inspiration, which was the wellspring or the source, if you will, of all the various iterations of Buddhism that we have come to know over the course of the millennia. I will qualify this a little bit in indicating that clearly the greatest commitment to the actual words that the Buddha was at least said to have articulated during his 45-year preaching career is the Theravada school, or the earlier school of the elders. Now, I think it was several hundred years after the Buddha's death, his parinirvana, that the actual words were committed to writing. And so, we don't know 100% sure exactly what the Buddha said, but, these are probably very good indications of the essence of what he taught through verbal means. But in the later Mahayana, of course, the argument there was that one needs to look not just at what the Buddha said, not just at what Shakyamuni said, but also at what he did. And what he did was he traveled the land and he preached and he taught and he helped people find relief from their suffering through teaching the Dharma. And so, that brings a new dimension to the teachings in the context of the Bodhisattva path, for example, and the altruistic and compassionate emphasis within the Mahayana. Now, leaping forward a little bit in the context of Pure Land Buddhism, or Jodo Shinshu, which is my lineage, I would say that we have an interesting development here in that we have it said that the reason for the Buddha's appearing in the world was to preach the larger sutra, the larger Sukhavati Sutra, within which we have the 18th vow, or the primal vow. And this is a notion that, again, is consistent with the Mahayana tradition, I would say, in the sense that there's a great emphasis, such as, for example, in the Lotus Sutra, on the idea of why did the Buddha come into the world? The idea is that we've leapfrogged or jumped from sort of Shakyamuni being viewed strictly as a human who engaged in the various practices that helped him become awakened, which is the meaning of Buddha or Bodhi. And he forged a path that the assumption was, and the teaching is within, for example, the Theravada, is that other people can follow this same path. But over the course of time, as is probably the case in other religions in the context of the natural human evolution of our spiritual thinking, is that we increasingly came to think of Shakyamuni as a spiritual entity, as a Sambhogakaya kind of entity, a cosmic Buddha with an infinite long lifetime, as is articulated in the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And so, again, we have to ask if he is conceived of as this sort of eternal, almost quasi-divine kind of figure. Why did he come into the world? Why did he show up in incarnate form? Why did he become a prince in India, then later to attain his enlightenment and to stick around in order to teach us limited human beings? Well, again, the Lotus Sutra says he came into the world in order to help people become Buddhas, because we all have the Buddha nature. And he wanted us to see our Buddha nature and to fulfill our Buddha nature. And in that sense, the Lotus Sutra, to my mind, is a system, or is a doctrine of universal salvation. But again, within the Mahayana Sutras, we have to acknowledge that even though all of them really talk in terms of the Buddha preaching, whether it's to Subhuti or Shariputra or Manjushri or Maitreya, whoever he's talking to, he's portrayed as being Shakyamuni. But of course, if these sutras were written around 100 AD in the Common Era, it couldn't have been the historical Buddha. So, that's something in a way we have to acknowledge. But then the way these things are framed is in terms of these are legitimate teachings within the Buddhadharma. And, most Buddhists accept this, although perhaps not all. Getting back, though, to the question of Shakyamuni himself, that then is the question as to what does the Shakyamuni Buddha figure preach in the Mahayana Sutras. And of course, he preaches a lot of things, but he is highly respected. Again, the founder of Buddhism is highly respected in all forms of Buddhism. So why does the Buddha come into the world? Shin Buddhism has its own answer, is that he came into the world specifically to preach the larger Sukhavati Sutra, the primal vow leading to our own opportunity to become reborn in his pure land of bliss when we die, to become a Buddha, and then to come back and help beings who are suffering in this world. Namo Mita Boots. Namo Mita Boots. Namo Mita